Howdy y'all, I hope you guys are all doing well, I hope you guys are safe, and I hope you guys are healthy. My name is Josh, and I love clothing. So it's been a really long time since I've done kind of a more informational video about kind of like a history of video about certain products, and I think, it's about time that I try to do another one. I'm gonna try to make this one a lot more concise. I'm definitely gonna try to put some timestamps exactly what kind of information there is to know in this video, so you definitely don't have to watch the whole thing. Just get whatever information that you need from this video. But today's video is going to be about the Converse Chuck Taylor All-Star. This shoe is one of the most prominent shoes in American history, I gotta say. There is a lot of different clothing items that is synonymous with kind of American youth, but the Converse Chuck Taylor All-Star really takes the cake. Now, before I go into specifics about the shoe itself, I wanted to give a little bit of background information about the Converse shoe company in general. So Converse was started in 1908 all the way in Malden, Massachusetts, and have since changed their headquarters to Boston, Massachusetts. Now, although Converse has been a company since 1908, they actually didn't have the All-Star, what they consider the All-Star, until 1917. And it wasn't actually called the Converse Chuck Taylor All-Star until, I believe, the 20s. If I'm not mistaken, it's 1923. Now, a lot of shoes nowadays are named after professional athletes or someone who's contributed very heavily to the design of the shoe, and it's no different with the Converse Chuck Taylor All-Star. Chuck Taylor was actually a shoe salesman as well as semi-professional basketball player, had asked for a shoe with specifications particularly to what his experience that he needed in a shoe, which then resulted in the Converse Chuck Taylor All-Star. And ever since, it has been cemented in American pop culture. You can see the Converse Chuck Taylor All-Star in so many different mediums, so many different movies, musical artists. A lot of different places and subcultures have adopted the Chuck Taylor All-Star as their unofficial uniform. For its appearances in movies, you've definitely seen the Chuck Taylor All-Star in movies like The Sandlot, many older sports movies, I Am Legend, Back to the Future. As for musical artists, bands like Green Day, Billy Joe Armstrong, the singer of Green Day, has definitely worn what looks like exclusively Converse Chuck Taylor All-Stars as a part of his performing uniform, as well as a lot of hip-hop influenced things. The first thing that comes to mind is Wiz Khalifa. When Black and Yellow first came out, Converse Chuck Taylor All-Stars had another just kind of resurgence in that subculture. And of course, Kurt Cobain of Nirvana definitely had his moments of wearing a whole lot of Converse shoes. Now, I can't possibly name every single example of the Chuck Taylor being in the limelight, but those are just a couple of examples to get you started. Yeah, sometimes it's actually pretty hard to believe that these shoes right here, as simple as they are, were the epitome of sneaker technology all the way back when. However, it really was the best that they could do at that time. And honestly, nowadays, it's not really all that useful for athletic activities. I know some people use Converse to weightlift because of the flat sole. I'm not a weightlifter, so I can't really attest to that. If you are and you know the benefits of using flatter sole shoes, please put it in the comments below. Nowadays, the Converse Chuck Taylor All-Star is primarily used for kind of fashion purposes. This shoe comes in a plethora of different styles and colors, and it has gotten so much recognition that there have been collaborations with designer brands anywhere from Margiela all the way to Off-White, as well as many other kind of street-centered brands and street artists. Now, this shoe hasn't gone unscathed through its almost 100 years of being around, actually pretty much like 100 years of being around. There have been constant kind of reworks of this product, and so even today there are many different, I guess what you could call, tiers to the All-Star. The very first of which is going to be the just base level Chuck Taylor All-Star. That one is probably the absolute cheapest, and you can probably find them today, I believe, for about $50 US dollars. They're widely available at really most just kind of general sneaker stores, and if I'm honest, I wouldn't suggest it. There is almost no cushioning. It's not the most comfortable thing in the world, but I mean, if you're really just in it for the looks, it works. That one definitely has the most color options as well as availability. So if you wanted, say, a red Chuck, then you could just go out and buy that for like about $50. There is a low top version and a high top version. I personally prefer a high top version like this one right here. This one is just a plain black, but this isn't the base Converse. The next kind of, I guess what you could call step up, is going to be the Converse Chuck 70. Now the Chuck 70 is really kind of my bare minimum. I wouldn't personally buy anything other than the Chuck 70. I don't quite know what year that the Chuck 70 was reissued, but just like the name says, this is basically a rework of the Converse Chuck Taylor from the 70s. And what you can kind of see as how it's different from the base model, so there is a little extra rubber that goes up the bumper of the shoe. The toe cap is a little bit more narrow. Obviously the laces are going to be a little bit different from the base level pair as well. And what really you can't see from the outside is that there is a memory foam insole. Love that memory foam insole. It really does change things as far as comfort goes. I can actually walk around all day and I'll be perfectly fine. If I were to compare kind of like the base level Converse Chuck Taylor All-Star and the Chuck 70, I would say that it is definitely worth the extra bump up in price. I believe the Chuck 70 is about $20 more than the base level Chuck Taylor, but the canvas is thicker, there's a memory foam insole. I would say that the extra kind of rubber bumper makes it a little bit more durable. I mean, they're not the most durable shoes in the world. If you want a durable shoe, I would go with a boot, to be honest with you, but for the look, you really just can't go wrong. And the Converse Chuck 70 also comes with a whole lot of very interesting different iterations. This is another one that I have, one of my favorites, my favorite Chuck 70s that I own. This is kind of a patchwork pair with different types of materials, and then there's the Chuck Taylor branding right there. If you actually look close, the cursive writing that is on the emblem itself actually is Chuck Taylor's signature. But yeah, this is another iteration that I have. I have one more, and this last one is actually another Chuck 70 that was initially green, but I decided to kind of do my own custom that is inspired directly by Margiela's Converse collaboration, where what they did was that they basically covered a Converse in paint, and as you wore it, it chips off to show the color underneath. Now, I think it gave this a really cool looking effect, and here it is. Like I said, it used to be green, and if you can kind of tell around the toe, it's cracking a little bit to show some of the material underneath. And there is the emblem, which you can kind of see peeking through the paint. So I did this maybe like 3-4 years ago, and as I wear them, I just kind of love them more and more. Those are basically all the Converse shoes that I own. All I own are the Converse Chuck 70s. I personally really love them, and price tag really doesn't break the bank. It is extremely, extremely easy to get a pair, and you can really just kind of, and most boutiques just kind of stock them all the time too anyway. Now a couple of other iterations of the Converse Chuck Taylor All-Star that I don't own but I would like to talk about would be the Chuck Taylor All-Star 2. Sometime, I think in the 2010s if I'm not mistaken, Converse was purchased by Nike, and so Nike used their technology in their insoles. I believe it was their Lunar Lawn technology, and so Chuck Taylor All-Star 2s have a Nike insole in a Converse shoe. I don't particularly like the layout and how thin the actual sole is, and it looks just like the original Chuck Taylor All-Star, or the base level pair, so I wasn't really a huge fan of it. They are more comfortable, they're a little bit more expensive, I believe at $90, but I would personally prefer to go with the memory foam insole with the Chuck 70. And then much lesser known pairs are actually going to be the Made in Japan pair. Looks like a great pair of shoes. I would love them, but they can get really expensive to get in the US. I can't really speak for how different the actual shoe is, but from what I can tell, the shape of the shoe itself is actually really nice. And then I guess what you could consider the top tier of Converse is going to be Converse Addicts. From my research, Converse Addicts were actually modeled after the 60s version of the All-Star, and honestly, I would really love a pair, but those get really expensive. I think up to $300-400 sometimes, sometimes more if it's a collaboration. But what is kind of interesting about that pair is that has a Vibram sole, so it is significantly more durable than the rubber that they use for their other pairs. So there have been so many different collaborations on these shoes, it's really just hard to name them all. Designers have collaborated with Converse Margiela, like I said earlier, in which my custom is inspired. Off-White has done a collaboration with them. Ambush, a Cold Wall, artists like Futura, Keith Haring. There's just so many different people who have acknowledged Converse as a pop culture mainstay that it is pretty obvious that Converse Chuck Taylors are going to be kind of the quintessential American shoe. I know I say that a lot, but it's kind of hard to really call it anything else. Now for how the actual shoes fit on your foot. It is notorious for being a very narrow shoe, so if you have a wide foot, you might want to avoid this shoe just altogether. It is rather narrow, and when you lace them up, it gets even more narrow. As for sizing, what most people will tell you is go one full size down. They fit very, very long, but not wide. And so if you're a size 9, get a size 8. The best possible way to kind of like do this is definitely try them on first, because how a Converse Chuck Taylor All-Star fits is a little bit it feels a whole lot different than any of my other sneakers, but the advice that most people will give you is go one full size down. Personally, I think for the Chuck 70s, you can go true to size if you really want to. That's what I do, but most people will tell you one full size down. Now, one last topic that I wanted to bring up is a lot of people, at least in like the consumer space, are kind of torn usually between Vans and Converse. Many people are in the school of thought where you're basically a fan of Converse or you're a fan of Vans. There's really no in between. I don't really like that attitude. I like both Vans and Converse personally, but I do find myself wearing more Converse than I do Vans. But yeah, I think that's about all the pieces of information that I wanted to go over with you guys. What do you guys think? Converse Chuck Taylor All-Stars. Do you have them? Do you like them? What's your experience with them? Give your sizing suggestions in the comments down below. If you want to have a conversation, feel free to DM me or comment on this video. I appreciate anybody watching and taking the time to watch this video. So thanks again, you guys. Until my next video, I will catch you guys later.